Today, we're talking to the sound team from Emilia Pérez, which is currently out on Netflix. This is director Jacques Audiard's treatment of an opera libretto started out, and it turns into a film that is just magical in many respects. We find out right away that it's the story of a Mexican cartel boss who wants to undergo gender transformation for a variety of reasons. And we end up with a mystery, crime, comedy, drama that ends with a look at the disappeared in Mexico. We're joined today with the French sound team, Cyril Holtz, Carolina Santana, Hortense Bailly, and Aymeric Devoldère. Cyril, let's start with you. Right from the opening, we're brought into this world through music, primarily. We open with Zoe Saldana's character, who's an attorney, and she's coming up with an argument for a case, and within 3 to 5 minutes, we're in a song. Can you tell me how this movie, what were your impressions as the re-recording mixer thinking, how am I going to handle this other world?
Yeah, it was, in many ways, it was a different film from all the others I had the chance to work on. In particular, Jacques Audiard really insisted on making a film that revisited all the aspects of the musical genre. He was not using actually the word musical comedy, as we say in French. He was using the word musical drama.
Okay.
So he insisted on the fact that he wanted the soundtrack and the musical track to be as cohesive as possible, without any boundaries between dialogues, songs, sounds, and the work was really about that, especially on transitions between the dialogues and the musical parts. So we worked very early in the process. For my part, I almost worked like 2 years before the mixing stage, and especially on voices. The big work was on voices, and then as we went along, it was a very empirical, So he's really Jacques is really a man of a few words. So it just like using like key elements or key words, and then we had plenty of freedom, and that's it. For the first scene, for example, Allegato. It was the first scene in for Rita, the first song for Rita, the first song for even in the film, and it was very complex because we had many elements. But it's very it's a pragmatic approach, but it was really, this scene was like a statement about the genre. And also what we would do afterwards in the film. So it was a bit like a mountain to climb, really, but it was a statement, really.
That's one thing. One thing I really noticed is how well integrated the voices are, and how early you're exposed to them. In some of the choral passages, even, it feels like these are voices coming out, not necessarily singers. There's certainly a scene, I Am Here, where we get voices from all over Mexico. Hortense and Carolina, can you talk about sort of how those voices, the spoken word, is integrated with the music? Carolina, would you like to start?
Sure. Well, I think it was, first of all, an important thing from the picture side of it, because the production on this scene was also a big challenge, working with so many singers on set, and also having to separate the the dancing in 3 parts to build that scene. So it was in the beginning important for all of the dancers to be really singing, even if we were going to re-record it afterwards and actually add voices with singers. The dancers were really singing, and extras were singing, and everybody was really trying to start also defining how the film was going to feel, which is that there's movement in everybody who is on screen, basically. And so that was a challenge also afterwards for the recording of these voices, because we had to feel that, not lose it when we had so much movement on screen. And so it allowed us to then work with a lot of different sources for the editing of this. And also it allowed Jacques to have like a construction on the narrative or the evolution that Rita was having throughout the writing of this allegato. And things were tested during ADRs and different ways of getting into her head to start building this, convincing herself of what she had to plead later on. So it was really powerful, and it it took a lot of stages to get there, and even moments where it asked from Zoe to really go through this whole riot of emotions, from an introspective into then this really powerful ending where she's alone with herself. So it was a really complex scene to work on.
5 minutes. We have a lot revealed. In fact, there's a lot of exposition in the songs. So the clarity of the vocal and the dialogue. Hortense, would you like to address that? Sort of the clarity of the voice and the need to be pronounced at the same time, the need to be in song.
Yeah. It was one of Jack's requirements about the voice, that we can go from the dialogues to the song with some fluidity, that we can move from the dialogues to the songs. And so it was the main work on the voice on this movie. Excuse me, sorry for my English. And Jacques wanted to feel in the voice of every character the body movement and the emotion, and even in the song he wanted to feel the emotion of the character. That's why we need to take every text that we have, so the production sound when it was usable, ADR, sometimes a pre-recorded voice, and we have to take everything to just feel everything natural between the dialogues and the songs, and even in the dance, we wanted to feel the body. And for Jacques, the song wasn't only the voice, but also the body of the characters and of the actress.
They move. That's a very good point. They move a lot. Aymeric, maybe you could address that, sort of this idea that this movie never stops. Not once, but yet it feels a nice pace. Can you talk about the movement of song and voice through the track?
Sorry for my English, but if I can, I will ask Carolina to translate for me, because my English is not fluent enough. We talked about Allegato for the beginning of the movie. Oui, c'était Là, mon travail principal, ça a été d'installer le marché en jouant le maximum les axes et de pouvoir tout de suite installer avec cette première chanson un peu ce qui allait définir toute l'esthétique du film.
Yeah, the main challenge was to actually build the streets of Mexico and feel that night market, and what it was gonna and it was gonna determine what the atmosphere of the film was gonna
That
be.
brings up a
So
very good point. That brings up, and I'd like maybe Emilia, it's not just the voice that moves in transition; it's the sound effects. And I mentioned a scene, Allegado, that's certainly evident with the night market and the rhythms and the pans and the voices and the footsteps. We also have that scene later where sound effects blend with in the scene in the back of the truck, when the rhythm of the truck becomes the sort of beat of his exposition. Could you talk about how sound effects work in those transitions?
About the scene with the car, the truck.
El encuentro.
Or Allegado, either one. How the sound effects work their way in with the voices to create a rhythm and a song.
Oui, c'est un bon exemple. Enfin, on a le trail, enfin la voiture, le trailer de Manitas. Ben avec Cyril, on avait décidé très tôt de pouvoir énormément décomposer enfin, d'avoir beaucoup de matière, mais très décomposée pour qu'on puisse vraiment jouer avec.
So it's a good example. This scene with the car, because with Cyril they had talked about having multiple elements that they could use to have layers and create this dynamic.
Et donc effectivement, il y avait beaucoup de couches, certaines assez vraiment. Enfin, il y avait un double enjeu parce que à l'image, ce véhicule, il paraît très très grand. Il y a quand même des plans qui sont assez larges. Et puis à ce moment-là du récit, Manitas est tellement impressionnant qu'il nous fallait créer une sensation d'un gros véhicule.
And so there had to be the contrast between the intimacy of what they were having, the conversation, and the seriousness of their discussion, and the size of the truck, and how would that make you could feel like it being gigantic, but still you would feel the closeness or the intimacy between them.
It's funny, even though
Sorry. Et comme effectivement ils sont censés être vraiment toujours en train de se déplacer plutôt sur des pistes, on avait l'occasion de pouvoir jouer beaucoup de sons assez dynamiques, avec des cliquetis plus ou moins dans les aigus, dans les basses, et effectivement c'est peut-être un des premiers morceaux peut-être où dans la rythmique, à partir de la rythmique de la chanson, j'ai essayé d'imbriquer des petites polyrythmies à l'intérieur de la musique de Camille et Clément.
And it was one of the scenes where he started and allowed himself to work with rhythmically with the music, and he always used the music as the bass and the tempo, and taking into consideration that to build and create with polyrhythmic the sounds that he was putting into the edit. So it was always a combination of both, and that also helped the seamless. Sorry.
Aymeric was using the term musicalizing sound elements, and I think it's really what it was all about in the film. No boundaries between music and sound, and we work very closely with Camille and Clément, the composers, and with Juliette, the editor, to make all those elements blending together, really.
And it's really well done. I would like to talk a minute then. You said intimacy and the privacy in this sense. It's a big part of the movie. When we could call it the interior world and the exterior world. Those are the transitions, but it's really about intimacy and identity in a way. Can you talk to me about these intimate moments? Because a big dance number is one thing, but the silence. I noticed there's an effective use of silence in this soundtrack, or almost whispers with a choir or voices coming out of it. Cyril, let's start with you. Can you talk to me about the use of quiet in this movie?
Yeah, it was not a very precise intention. It was all about Jack direction. We just followed up, and our work was an extension of that vision. But one particular scene is the one in London in the restaurant. You know, where as the light
Still on,
goes
yeah,
out, yeah, there's a kind of silence that that goes with with Rita's emotion and her fear as she discovered that who she has in front of her, and Aymeric created this kind of silence, but it's not as easy as that. It's not a real silence.
no,
It was about, you know, like before we had conversations in the restaurant and the music, and it suddenly stops. But to transition toward, you know, like muffled conversations, and even the silence is complex actually, and.
yeah,
And I think we can feel something, and it creates the darkness, and that goes with the picture. And we had so much fun to create those moments. Those moments, almost it was almost as good as creating the more spectacular ones.
yeah. I've had Oscar-winning sound designers tell me it's the quiet scenes that are hard. You know, they can be the hard ones to mix.
Mm.
Hortense, Carolina, if you would talk about the vocals and how they, I mean, we have the Rita character, it can blast out a number and become whisper quiet. Can you talk to me about those more intimate moments in the use of the voice?
Carolina, est-ce que tu peux me préciser juste la question entre les...
Oui, peut-être parler de la difficulté de faire enchaîner des moments où Rita doit être plus dans les silences, dans le moment de l'intimité un peu. Et peut-être les challenges de la construction de la cohérence de ces passages, peut-être quelque chose de cet ordre. Ou...
Et surtout, tu sais, le passage des moments forts sur les dialogues aux moments très silencieux, etc.
Okay. Jacques Audiard loves contrast. He really like when it's really impressive, a lot of sounds, and sometimes when it's very quiet. So this is built in the picture editing. So this is Juliette loves those contrasts too. So it's we have this in the picture editing. So after for the voice, it's what is challenging is that sometimes on set it's not as quiet as we want. So, but now we have a lot of plugins that can be very useful for that. But it was not a real challenge, that contrast between both mood. I think it's always very very fluid. Comment on dit fluide?
Yeah,
fluid. So it was very fluid between all the different states. So I don't think it's a real challenge for me. I don't know how to explain it.
There's bringing it down. It's almost like removing outside extraneous noise. Carolina, how the voice, the intimacy of a voice, many opportunities for it here in this movie.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to what we were talking of, the construction of how the film was thought about, and because it's also, like we said, an opera. So I think it was even written with that in mind, and almost like a score, also because Camille was involved in it with Clément since early on, I feel like there's a really music's composition side of it. So it's built into it. And so the silence or the intensity is built into how the film was written, basically. And I think it was a challenge for the actresses more to be able to evolve and deliver the performance with that in mind. And what made it interesting for the re-records or even different takes on set to try and deliver something different for Jacques and try things and create dynamics in what they were doing with the performance, the vocal performance. So
it's true. That happens in the song too. Papa, can you smell me? You smell like Papa. That song. It's between the two of them. It's not a big dance number, and it's a very emotional moment.
It is
all tied out there. Let's talk about one of the big scenes. I love when Rita is almost at the end of her rope there at the end, and she starts singing and dancing about corruption at a big ball. And we're near the end, and she's almost had it, and it's a spectacular number. It starts with a speech by Emilia, and then it comes down to Rita. Can we talk about that scene? Cyril, would you like to start? It's a wonderful scene, and
it's a wonderful scene, and it was a difficult one for me, especially in mix, because it was a wild scene and a very declarative one. Jack insisted a lot on that scene being very wild, very powerful. Things are getting very serious in that scene, really, and about Rita's state of mind. So the music was wild, very powerful, and we had those stomping moves from the crowd, and it was very rhythmic. But we had really hard times to make the Rita's voice intelligible, and at the same time, really with a lot of movements as usual with Jacques. So for all those scenes, a few years before, I was working with Jacques on a French dubbed version of his film Sisters Brothers. And he was really he was not really convinced about despite my efforts about the feeling with the voices. He always found it was too motionless, and I came up with an idea of creating a tool that would replicate body movements and even boom movements. And we released it with a company we founded. It was our first release, this tool, and we used it a lot on that scene in Bienvenida too. And all that to say that a long time collaboration with a director can be very enriching on that scene in particular, we used it a lot. Otherwise, as Carolina was saying, it was all about direction and construction, and we just had to follow what was made before by Juliette, by Jacques, and the music department. So I always say that, but we are not very. I think it's not modesty, but we just had to follow. Really, it was not that difficult.
But the voices, I mean, you still blend them in. Emilia is giving a speech, and yet when the scene comes together, her speech becomes song. And that's very beautifully blended in. Carolina, would you like to talk about that scene, or would you like to pick a particular favorite musical scene? There's so many good ones in this movie.
There's so many. I think we also think that we're also in love with so many that I don't know if we can know how to pick, but that one was really impressive one. I think I love that one because it was a huge challenge for Caroline and for Zoe especially, but I'm really touched with Para, which is the scene right after La Lucecita. It was a scene that was hard for me to listen to. I think it was one of the most powerful when I heard it for the first time. Just heard the temp music for it, and I just think it's a really powerful song of everybody coming in and singing all together, which was a really, really beautiful to do.
There's really motion. There's really motion in these scenes, and the songs themselves are expository. Hortense, do you have a particular scene you enjoyed that you just keep thinking about?
It's not easy to just pick one. I really like Bienvenida, the scene when JC, the character of Selena Gomez, just woke up. Because this scene, I think it's really crazy. He wanted the character to sing at the beginning, but not very sing because she's in a bad mood. So we just wanted to try to install a song, but she's very grumpy and all that. And at the end, it's a very energetic and powerful voice, with a lot of movement and all the dancers. I think it's very crazy. And the two space, the room and the dark box. And I think this scene is really crazy. And that's what I like in Jacques Audiard's sometimes. It's really crazy. And sometimes you say, "Whoa, what are you thinking about?"
Well, we get more of her character in that scene. I mean, we get a lot about her character in there. She feels trapped. She feels rebellious. It's all there. Aymeric, as supervisor, you dealt with all of this. So, what particular scene stood out for you?
No, like Cyril, Hortense, Carolina, I like a lot El Mal or Bienvenida because of the songs are so powerful. But as we said before, there are a lot of the silent scenes and je vais continuer en français parce que je vais pas y arriver. Toutes ces scènes effectivement de rupture, ces moments de silence, ces moments un peu de bulle qui sont vraiment très très caractéristiques aussi du cinéma de Jacques.
The scenes that are more intimate and that have that contrast and those moments of like time suspension or like a feeling of a bubble that characterize Jacques' films, basically, that are unique to them.
Et elles ont toujours été passionnantes à faire parce que effectivement créer ce vide, ces silences, effectivement il faut le construire et que ça implique ce travail de transition qui était vraiment très passionnant à faire sur ce projet.
And that there are scenes also that because they're in transitions or that create rupture, that really make it the challenge and the passion part of working in his films.
En fait, ce qui me touche le plus dans le film, c'est justement, il y a vraiment une dynamique incroyable. Enfin, il y a au cinéma, c'est encore un endroit où on peut avoir de la dynamique, mais sur ce film, il y en a une qui est très très singulière.
And what he loves the most is the dynamics that you can have on this film, especially not just because it's cinema, but because the film demands it and allows it to happen.
the story itself.
The story itself. Yeah.
I want to thank you. It's late in France, and I appreciate you coming out. It really is a special film, and I encourage everybody watching this to take a look, because it's the kind of inventiveness and movie making that makes film magical.